guys, it's Will from Tested.
And it's Norm from Tested.
Norm, you have been trying something a little different for the last few weeks.
Well, different in that before a month ago, I was primarily using an iPhone.
Yeah.
iPhone 5, like you have, since it was released in September.
The iPhone.
But I have since switched to a new phone, and that's what we're here to talk about. It is the HTC One, made by HTC, but not the plain HTC One. It is actually the Google Play Edition HTC One.
So this is it's not quite a Nexus phone, but it's stock Android as much as you can put on an HTC phone.
As much as Google would allow on the HTC phone.
And we're not going to talk a ton about like changing to Android from iOS, because you've written about that, and there's a bunch of posts about that on the site that have detailed your experience.
So this is an unlock phone. You buy it directly from Google. It's $600, and it's exactly the same hardware as you would get if you bought an HTC One on contract with the Sense UI and HTC's version of Android OS 4.2.2. But this one has like you said, a slimmed down version, almost close to the stock Android, but not exactly a stock Android. So if you took, when Google released Android 4.3 last week, that's not on this phone yet.
Quite yet.
HTC has to do its own things, and because it makes sense, because it's HTC's hardware, so it needed some low-level software stuff for the camera.
So like drivers and stuff like that.
Drivers for the camera, their special camera, and also for like Beats audio and stuff like that.
Okay, so basically this is as close as you can get to a stock Android experience with this year's phone, because the Nexus 4 came out late last year, but it's basically 2012 hardware.
Yeah, slightly slower. And it did take a long time for Google to have the Nexus 4 in stock, and we reviewed that earlier this year. I really like the Nexus 4, and it's really cheap, several $100s cheaper than the HTC One.
But it's only HSPA Plus.
Yeah, no LTE, HSPA Plus on GSM networks. HTC One and the Samsung Galaxy S4, as of today, who knows what Motorola will announce in a couple days in terms of the Moto X, are the highest quality hardware phones that you'll be able to buy with a near Nexus experience.
Stockish
Android, exactly.
So in the middle of 2013, if you want a stockish Android experience on modern hardware, 2013 hardware, you can get the HTC One Google Edition, or there's also a Galaxy S4 Google Edition. Anything else?
Or possibly Motorola's Moto X whenever they announce that later this week, possibly.
But Nexus 4, while it was great at the end of last year, is an HSPA Plus only phone.
Yeah, there's
doesn't have LTE.
Severe limitations. It was very low cost, which was great, but like you said, no LTE, which is the biggest problem with the Nexus 4. So moving over to the HTC One, no problems at all, because it's an unlocked phone. Just throw in your standard micro SIM, not a nano SIM like the iPhone.
So did you
adapter?
You got an adapter? You didn't have to go get a new SIM card or anything like that?
Nope, and just because I'm on AT&T and that's just GSM, pop that in. LTE works fine. Networks work fine. It's going to be only for T-Mobile and AT&T, and not for Sprint and Verizon. If you're on Sprint and Verizon, you have to get the regular HTC One, not the Google Play Edition.
Because it's CDMA versus GSM.
But in terms of hardware, this is a very, very, very high-end phone. So this is HTC's aluminum unibody, and so in the back and the front, it's all unibody. You know, they have these white bands on the side, plastic bands that kind of, I think they're for the antennas, but you know, it's a really big screen, 4.7-inch screen, and it doesn't even weigh that much more than the Nexus 4. Nexus 4 has a lower resolution screen. It's a little bit thicker. But because of the way it's constructed, if you actually look on the bottom, it's actually curved. So it has this, I guess people call it like a pyramid style construction, where all the major components are on the top, and the battery is on the closer to the screen, and it kind of tapers off to the bottom. So in your pocket, even though this is a 4.7-inch big phone, it actually only weighs a few grams more than the Nexus 4.
It's 145 grams versus 139 for the HTC One to the Nexus.
And it's only slightly thicker, but even though it's slightly thicker than the Nexus 4, it feels about the same size, and doesn't have that glass back. A lot of people who bought the Nexus 4, which it smudges up, because you can tell very easily, they actually drop their Nexus 4s and crack the back. This is aluminum. The only problem I've had is that the white bands here, your jeans, if you wear blue jeans, the blue kind of rubs off a little bit on the white. And so it's a little bit of aesthetic.
But that's a big phone. It fits in your jeans pocket okay?
Fits in the front pocket, fits in the back pocket. I am holding it more in my hand these days. I really like the feel of the phone holding it in my hand. Compared to if you go back to...
As opposed to like resting it on the table?
As when I'm walking down the street.
Oh, so you take it out and carry it instead of leaving it in your pocket.
Keep it out and I actually hold it in my hand. holding the iPhone is noticeably lighter because it's only 112 grams, so it's like dozens of grams heavier. But after using it for a month, it really is not noticeable.
You're not hurting your wrist.
Yeah, definitely not at all. This is well under a quarter of a pound. But really, the big thing is this screen.
Yeah.
And in 2013, all the high-end Android manufacturers have made phones with 1080 screens, 1080p screens. That means 1920 pixels wide here by 1080 pixels
so
tall.
16 by 9 screen. It's an IPS panel in this phone, right?
It is an LCD IPS panel, and HTC is calling it a Super LCD 3, which is just fancy marketing.
Sounds like marketing stuff.
Has the optical bonding, so the LCD screen is bonded very close to the glass, the digitizer. So like on the HTC One X that we really liked last year, and on phones like the iPhone 5 now, it looks a lot like this image is on the screen, on the glass, as opposed to deep beneath the glass.
It's one of the things you first notice when you pick up a phone that uses the closer the screen is to the surface of the glass, the kind of more real it looks like and less like a screen. And when you combine that with the pixel density on this screen and also the color reproduction, which is looks really phenomenal.
So in terms of both of those things, pixel density and color reproduction, pixel density here is 468-ish, which is ridiculous. It's very, very high. And if you're talking about icons, I don't think icons on Android are really designed for that high pixel density. So you're only going to be able to notice that in text rendering, font rendering, and photos, high resolution photos.
Right.
And that stuff looks wonderful. I'm going to pull up just images, high resolution photos pulled up on Flickr, for example. And you can see, I don't know if you can make this out, but like 20 megapixel images on here. You can zoom all the way in and you get just such fine detail. May not be noticeable for you watching online, but in person, it really is something that I didn't believe would make a difference.
Yeah.
But when using the phone and looking at the phone, I mean, I just love looking at the screen. The colors are extremely vibrant. That's due to the subpixel arrangement being RGB. And being a very good RGB arrangement, that means if you look into each individual pixel, it is arrangement of red, green, and blue, just like it is on other IPS LCDs.
Or on a real monitor.
On a real monitor. If under a magnifying glass, you can tell that the black space between those subpixels are a little farther than they are between like an iPhone. But it's also a much bigger display. Yes, it's much bigger display, much denser. When put side by side, and I think we can actually throw up a comparison right now. You have the iPhone 5 on the left, and this is just an app icon, Instagram in this case. So you captured this image with like a macro lens? This is a very high resolution macro lens, cropped all the way in. And you look at the center, if you can see on the right side, the HTC One, the black spaces around the subpixels it's bigger. Around the subpixels. Around the subpixels are bigger, and then on the right side, it's a little more compact, but they're also bigger subpixels on the iPhone. I mean, you can see the difference in pixel density just by looking at this. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. You liked the screen? The capacitive touch and stuff like that on the screen is good? Touch is fine. You know, it's one of those things where if you go out in very bright sunlight and you put a phone up against the sun, like the brightest light source you can ever find, you can actually see the capacitive grid array. The little dots. The little dots. On some phones it's dots. I think on some touchscreens it's like lines. The worse quality capacitive screen you have, the more apparent it is, the arrangement. On here, I could barely tell, I could barely see that capacitive touchscreen arrangement, which was really nice. One thing I do miss from the Nexus 4 is that the Nexus 4 here has that really nice bevel on top of the screen on the edges. Across the edges on the side? Just on the edges, so when you swipe left to right, you kind of, your thumb glides across. Let me see if I can demonstrate it here. Very specific. It was one of the very nice nuanced things I loved about the Nexus 4 right here. Kind of is beveled right there. You can see here it's a little more rigid. It's a square edge, so you have to kind of plop your finger on the screen and scroll left and right as opposed to coming in from the edge. So how did you find using the screen? I mean, you have, I would say, mid-sized hands, and you definitely can't get a full thumb across the entire screen as the iPhone design was. I'm always behind, from using the iPhone, I've always been a fan of using this easel position where I keep my pinky on the bottom. Okay. For the iPhone, it makes a lot of sense because it's a very narrow phone. And so I feel like this is a very tight grip. And you know, while you can, on the iPhone, get a thumb all the way across the top and bottom, it feels like it wants to
Yeah, it
slip
could
down.
slide.
Yeah, and it's a very smooth edge.
Don't drop my phone, Chan.
No, I'm not going to do that. Because this is a wider phone, it was easier for me to adjust to not using the easel, but just a grip from the side.
Just kind of tuck it into
yeah,
the
because
pocket of your...
it's a physically wider phone. And while I can't hit that notification bar on top, I have to use my other finger to get that notification bar. I mean, it's still comfortable to use on the bottom.
It's a two-handed phone.
It is a two-handed phone if you want to use the notification, if you want to do pinch and zoom. Like I can't do, like on my iPhone, I could train myself to do the one-handed pinch to zoom. Like you're kind of clasping on the side.
You get the side of your finger.
You can't really do a one-handed pinch to zoom here while having a solid grip on the phone. I mean, a bigger phone, you're going to have to get used to it in a different way. One thing I also want to mention is that unlike the Nexus 4 and other Nexus devices, this one does have physical capacitive buttons on the bottom.
Normally they're built into the screen. They're part of the software. They're a screen button.
So on the Nexus phones, you can see on the bottom, you have home, you have your task switcher, and you have your back button.
It's more apparent on the Nexus 7, where if you rotate, then the buttons move to the bottom edge of the screen.
Absolutely. And this is a Nexus 7, where you can see the buttons here. And if you rotate, the buttons also move across. But on here, you actually get a little more, I guess you can call it desktop space, home screen space, real estate, because they're the physical buttons below the screen.
And you can barely see them in the shot, it looks like.
Can barely see them.
They're down there on either side of the logo.
Home button and a back button. There is no task switcher button to task switch.
Okay.
You double tap on the home button, and there goes your task switcher. You can kind of open and close apps. But I actually like having this physical button. One, because you actually get a small vibration when you hit it.
Okay.
Very, very small vibration, which you don't get.
No, you don't get that.
Do not get that on
I mean, you can turn that on, I think. But
also, Google Now, which is probably my favorite feature of Android, on the Nexus, the way you access Google Now is you hold down the home button and you slide up to do Google Now.
Oh, see, on the Nexus 7, you just swipe up from the bottom.
Right, you swipe up by touch. You type home screen.
You don't even have to hold it. You just touch and swipe. Touch and swipe.
Touch and swipe.
Touch and swipe, Norm. It's that
Here,
easy.
you hold the home button and it pops up Google Now.
Oh, that's nice. Is that configurable, or is that just...
No.
Okay.
So there is no secondary pop-up menu. You just have to hold here, and that pops up. I like that because I use Google Now a lot instead of Siri for iPhone for creating reminders, getting directions, doing Google searches, and you can just hold down Google. Where is the nearest Starbucks?
And
I don't know if you
classic
can see this.
example.
And there it goes. Gives me directions.
Showing us the nearest Starbucks. That's great.
Right there. There's also on top a flashing LED, which actually I don't have a notification for now. But in this top corner, if anyone sends me an email or message, or if I plug this in to charge, it will actually blink. It's right here in the speaker grill. There's a speaker grill up on top and a speaker grill on the bottom as well, because you get stereo speakers that way. The power button is on the top. It's actually flush.
So you can't hit it accidentally?
So you can't hit it accidentally. I actually wish it was popped up, and my phone just vibrated, meaning I got a message. And if you can see...
There you go. The light just came on.
There goes a little green blink.
So it's just hidden in the speaker grill up at the top.
Just hidden in the speaker grill. On the Nexus 7, there's actually a light on the bottom that can pulse. I like this bright green blinking LED as a notification.
Finish your thought about the power button. I want to talk about the speakers a little bit because they're kind of interesting.
So the power button is flush. It's not difficult to hit. And I'm definitely used to being on the left side now as opposed to on the iPhone being right, but I do wish it protruded a little bit. Because it is the only way to get the phone away from sleep.
Yeah.
Like you can't hold down the power button here, the home button here, and wake it from sleep. You have to press this recessed
It seems like a little bit of a weird design choice.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. There's speakers on both sides of the phone, on the top and the bottom, right?
Speakers right in front, as opposed to on the iPhone, you actually only have speakers right there. It's a microphone on that side.
Yeah. So does that mean you get actual stereo sound out of it?
You do get actual stereo sound, and actually it sounds fine. It sounds louder than the iPhone. I mean, when you're talking about evaluating speaker quality on a phone, even though this has the Beats branding, like this isn't going to replace even like one of those jam boxes, small jam boxes,
or even those $20 speakers.
Yeah, those $20 speakers. Yeah. I mean, this again, all phones can hope for is to be serviceable. It is more than serviceable when you're talking about doing a speakerphone and putting someone on speakerphone. If you want to play music, I can show you music really quickly on here, and let's see if this will work. Volume buttons.
So that's really loud, just to be for a phone.
Yeah, and if I put it face down, you can still hear it.
Yeah, it basically sounds like a really nice transistor radio style, like portable small radio.
It sounds a little tinny.
It's a phone.
Yeah, and it does have this option because HTC has a partnership with Beats. In settings, the audio, there is a Beats checkbox.
Is that like bass boost?
I couldn't tell. I think it is like slightly. It's like software, digitizing. But turning it off and on really doesn't do much difference. Like, I don't even know why that checkbox is there. Leave it on. I don't know who would want. It doesn't take more power.
Post processing.
Whatever.
Can we talk about cameras and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how about the speed of the processor?
Okay, speed of the processor is a good place to
go.
Very
important. On the Nexus 4 and actually on the Nexus 7, these both have Snapdragon S4s. Crates are 1.5 gigahertz.
Dual core?
Quad core.
Quad core.
This has a quad-core Snapdragon S4, but it's 1.7 gigahertz, and they all have the same Adreno 320 graphics GPU. I was fine with the Nexus 4 in terms of smoothness for web browsing, and I'm totally fine with it on the HTC One. But it is smoother on the HTC One than it is on the Nexus 4. And this is something that if you're using it day to day and you're used to it, you're never going to notice a difference. It only really is apparent if you're really nitpicky and if you look under, for example, high-speed video. So I did a video comparison, which will queue up right now. And this is at 240 frames per second. They've recorded this at 720p. On the right is Nexus 4. On the left is HTC One. And you can tell that just the refresh rate on the Nexus 4, it's slower. It's like stuttering in terms of how many frames. And also, as I'm moving my fingers up and down, it's actually more responsive on the HTC One. Here's a comparison between the iPhone 5 and HTC One.
And is that Safari on the iPhone 5?
And this is Safari.
And Chrome on the HTC One?
So different renderers. And it's actually a little laggier on the HTC One than it is on the iPhone. We know that Apple really prioritizes rendering and touch response. Right. And here it is on the home screen, so you feel like there should be no other applications running. And on the iPhone on the left, it actually is still more responsive than it is on the HTC One. There's a big difference between lag and stuttering.
Yeah, this isn't bad.
This is not stuttering.
Right.
On the HTC One, and here it is again on the iPhone. So I'll show you on the screen right now.
It's almost like judder. It's almost like it's just missing a frame and the timing's off and it has to speed up on the next one.
In real time, if you want to look right now, you would never be able to tell the difference in real time between the Nexus 4 and the HTC One. This is fast. Like, I'm moving my fingers up and down really fast, and I'm getting scrolling is very responsive, very fast. There is no stuttering.
It pops up more for me when you're going slower, though. And again, it's not something that impacts the usability. It's something that after a couple of days, I'm sure you're completely used to. But it was pretty startling for me coming from iOS devices to the Nexus 7.
And that is only because on iOS, that touch response is prioritized so high. Where there is a little bit of a delay, now this is not stuttering, this is lag, is I think in the actuating of the touch sensor. So if I move my finger very, very softly,
you just got the...
He's got the... Oh, and there's loading an image. And there, okay. So if I move my finger, actually, just go on the home screen, very subtly, there's a little bit of a delay. I'm moving it first, and then it catches up.
Yeah, but I almost think that that's a software thing where it's trying to decide if you're pressing and holding, or if you're trying to drag, or what.
And that time it takes for it to decide is what causes that perception of lag. Because once it knows that I'm moving back and forth, then it's pretty instantaneous. But in that initial touch where I'm just moving up, there is a little bit of that lag.
Yeah.
And again, here's a comparison. You have the iPhone 5 and the HTC One on the left, and you have the HTC One and the Nexus 4 on the right over there. I think in terms of responsiveness, the iPhone 5 is still the most responsive, HTC One close second, and then the Nexus 4 a little behind.
Let us know what you guys think in the comments.
I'm sure people have their own opinion.
We will hear all about it. There's a ton of radios inside this phone.
Ton of stuff. You have your NFC, you have 802.11 AC, so you're future-proof for that. Wi-Fi Direct, it charges over USB 2.0, but that also is an MHL adapter, so you can plug it micro HDMI.
That's great. If you want to hook it up to your TV.
If you really want to hook up to your TV, you can do that.
Since this is
Bluetooth
a
1080p
phone, will it pump out
1080p?
1080p?
1080.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there are the cameras, which are, I think, probably the second most used feature on a phone, aside from like email.
It's the kind of thing that when you want you want it to be good.
Yeah. Let's talk about the front camera real quick. It's just a 2-megapixel camera. Nothing special about that.
For video conferencing.
Yeah,
basically.
for video conferencing, for taking selfies, whatever.
Don't take selfies with the front camera, Norm.
Or some people like to do that.
You turn it
or
around, you
video.
aim it the other way, you learn to get the right position so you can get the shot you want. I see somebody taking a picture. At Comic-Con, you see somebody taking a picture with their favorite celebrity, and they take it with the front camera, and they're like, oh man, that's not even going to look good enough for a Facebook profile picture. You totally blew it.
Not good enough. The back camera is interesting because it's actually a 4-megapixel camera.
Really? So they went low megapixel.
They went low, but their pixels, they say, are bigger than the pixels on competitors' cameras.
So does that mean they can capture more photons per pixel?
The physical area, I think it's 2 micrometers wide, a square, so you can have more photons because photons are infinitesimally small.
Yes.
Technically hit this sensor, which gives you better light resolution.
Low light.
Theoretically better low light.
Is there smaller
less noise.
gap between pixels?
They say it's about the same. I mean, the arrangement's the same. It's just the physical bigger pixels.
Weird.
4-megapixel. What's also weird is that it's a 16:9 camera. So on something like a regular phone, where if you take a picture, and I'm going to show you here on the Nexus 4, this is actually a cropped-in picture. Let me give it a subject. So
nice
I'm basically filling up the entire frame with this.
Okay.
And this is actually Android 4.3. But if I look at the picture, it actually is, you see the bars on the side?
Stuff outside the crop, yeah.
Yeah, so when I was in that viewfinder, it was actually, it's cropping in.
Right.
On the sensor.
Okay.
That's not great. I mean, what it basically says is that, who cares about framing?
We have extra space.
We have extra space. And it happens same on the iPhone too. Although on the iPhone you can like pinch in.
Yeah. Better to have too much than not enough, though.
Right. Here, this is actually, because it's a 16:9 sensor, what you see in here on the camera, in the viewfinder, is what you're going to get, actually. So if I take a picture, that is exactly, and it fills up that entire frame. There is no additional pixels left out. It's weird that it's a 16:9 aspect ratio sensor, and it's weird that it's 4 megapixels. So I took a ton of photos, went to Comic-Con, and I want to show some photos, some sample photos.
Oh, is this what you shot your gallery with?
No, I didn't. No. No one wishes.
Last year's HTC One X had that weird camera with the dongle hanging out of the back, right? The knob.
Yeah, it kind of sticks. This
like
doesn't
a little
stick out.
thump. Yeah.
This one is because it's curved. It's still flush in the bottom.
Okay.
We'll show the first photo.
Yeah,
this actually wasn't at Comic-Con, but it was what I would call in the perfect conditions. You got a baby. She's being really cute.
Yep,
There's little bubbers. It's in daylight, but it's not overblown for her because she's actually in a little bit of shade. I would call this the ideal scenario for taking any photo.
Was this like a HDR style photo?
No, this is just a regular photo with no exposure compensation needed.
Okay.
But you can see in the back, way overblown.
Way blown out.
And that I thought was very characteristic of this camera overall. This is actually ISO 125, basically the lowest. You can't manually set the ISO.
Right.
It's not like a Nokia phone, a Windows phone.
Well, most smartphones you can't.
Most
you can't adjust
yes,
ISO
except
manually.
unless you're a Windows phone or Nokia. ISO 125, which means should be very low noise, and it is very low noise, but very blown out in the back. If you go to the next photo, this I call ideal indoor conditions. There's Joey and George R. R. Martin. And this is ISO 200 in a very well-lit indoor room. But you can tell on their skin, very blown out.
Well, there's some shading, there's some shadows on their faces and stuff like that. His hat is shadowing half of his face.
Right, but I'm saying, if you look at George R. R. Martin's collar and his, I guess, the right side, his left shoulder, completely blown out.
Well, but it made the right choice here, right? It blew out the part, it kept the detail in the shadows so you could see that.
Joey looks like he has paint splattered on his face.
Joey does look a little paler than
They're
normal.
both also in a bathroom, it seems like. No, they're not real. They're in a dressing room.
It's a dressing room.
So not really that great. If you go to the next photo, if you want to talk about low light, purely low light. This is in almost pitch blackness. This is ISO 1250, so really pumping up that grain. You can see in that back between the trees and the stage, very, very noisy.
So this was something that you would have been able to see that there were people on the stands with your eyes had you turned and looked.
Yeah.
But like you wouldn't have been able to make out this level of detail and see that people
and this
wearing
actually
white shirts
is
and stuff
much
like this.
brighter than what reality showed. But because the gain is pumped up so much, it's very noisy. And you can see even in the trees in the top right-hand corner,
dithering and stuff in
just a lot of that ISO noise. And then the next photo, if we want to swap that, this is right here on our desk. Again, really good lighting conditions. The 16:9 photo of the Ecto 1, and this is from the HTC One. If you want to put it side by side or go to the next photo, it's from the iPhone. I found the color representation on the iPhone's 8-megapixel camera much, much better. And this is not HDR. This is just straight up taking a photo.
Can you flip back, Joey? So yeah, look at the white on the hood of the HTC One photo, and then flip back to the iPhone one.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the detail on the hood of the car, which you couldn't on the HTC.
And the colors just look way more vibrant on the photo from the iPhone 5.
Yeah.
So even though HTC has this ultra pixel camera, and they say all these things about having better low light, it's still, I don't think, is as good as the iPhone. It might be better than other Android phone. It's better than Nexus 4, but it's okay. I would not use this as my dedicated camera.
So on the stock Android, well, you wouldn't use that any smartphone for your dedicated camera. On the Android camera app now, you can shoot exposure and focus independently, right?
Yeah. So even though we'll go back to, we'll show you the camera apps for both. This is Android 4.22, and what they introduced, again, I'm going to have a subject. We always got to be taking. What Google introduced is a menu where you can hold down and tap, and you have HDR, one setting on the left here,
like
and then you have exposure.
Menu,
so you have your exposure compensation, and then you have more options like white balance right there, and your scene. Let me see if you can see that. So it's this kind of radial menu right here, countdown timer and all that stuff.
So this is all stuff that you just don't get on iOS. I mean, there are very few settings.
Yeah.
I mean, iOS 7 is going to introduce some filters and stuff like that.
And then Android 4.3 has this same radio menu. It used to be a full circle in Android 4.2.2, but on 4.3 it is this top half circle.
Yeah. So that's camera. Anything else you want to? I mean, how was video performance?
Video is fine. Same applies where if you're looking through the LCD, you're getting the full 16:9
There's no
video.
Uncrop.
Yeah, no uncrop. Image stabilization is good, but I looked. If you compare direct comparison between iPhone and HTC One video, I would still choose iPhone's video over the HTC One. And
does
finally,
it do image stabilization and all that stuff?
There's image stabilization. Okay. There's a dedicated image processor here for that. Finally, probably the most important thing for a phone is its battery life.
Yes, battery life is super important.
Especially when you're talking about a phone with a 1080p screen.
And LTE and all the other stuff.
With LTE, I mean, you basically have the best that you could put in a phone in this hardware. It's going to theoretically suck up a lot of battery life. It's a 2300 milliamp hour battery, which is larger capacity than this Nexus 4.
Well, that makes sense, though, given the LTE versus non-LTE.
Battery life is wonderful.
Really?
Wonderful. It's
define wonderful.
When you say all-day battery,
yes,
heavy use all day, so including tethering, web browsing nonstop.
When you were at Comic-Con, you're in the worst possible.
I never had to charge it in the middle of the day.
Wow.
Never once.
That's pretty good.
I never once have had to charge this phone in the middle of the day, and never once ran out. Only one time did it run out in the middle of the day, and that was when I went to California Stream, and I was at like 10% battery by the end of the day.
Okay.
And that was it, in the red. Battery life, I cannot say enough good things about the battery on this phone. Of course, that's a month of use, and who knows how the degradation curve will go, and how you treat your battery, the conditions you use it in, the temperature. If you're in a really hot area, the batteries, you got to kind of feed the battery, nurture the battery.
You treat it right, and it treats you right.
Ideally, the battery does not lose more than maybe 30% of its new capacity potential after a year or two of use.
Yeah.
Some people, if they train their batteries all the way down and they don't charge it or they don't use their phones, after a year it'll be maybe 60% its original capacity.
Right.
I use an app called HD Widgets. A lot of people asked this when we did the.
This is like beautiful widgets, or like a competitor to that?
Yeah, it adds home screen widgets and lock screen widgets. But the best thing about HD widgets is actually, I'm going to show you, if you go here to the settings, and this is, you have to pay for this app, and you go to settings, they're actually notification widgets, and you check the battery level and duration box. And what that does is give you in the top left-hand corner an indicator of what percent battery life you have. If you scroll down, you can actually get detailed battery information.
You got to have the percentage.
I got to have the percentage.
You min-max that battery.
Yeah, you get your health.
Okay, so I said we weren't going to talk about lame switching stuff, but you're in what about a month now on
a little
this
over
phone?
a month. Yep.
Are you switching back? Are you like what do you like about Android versus iOS?
I do not see myself switching back.
Really?
We'll see what happens when iOS 7 comes out. But right now, I don't even have my iPhone here. This is your iPhone.
I know, it's my iPhone.
Because my iPhone stays at home.
The training wheels are off.
Yeah, no iPhone. The one problem, as I've written about, is iMessages. Because I have an iPad, because I have a MacBook, it still thinks that my iMessages is tied to my phone number. If you go to Apple's developer support site, you can unregister your iPhone.
Okay.
And that will theoretically untie iMessages. It hasn't worked for me. Some people have said, and I haven't done this yet, you got to unregister all your iOS and all your Mac devices, basically restart your iMessages, re-register everything again to get text messaging working here.
And it's more for other people than for you. If you send messages out to iOS users,
totally
it's fine.
But when they respond,
it's when they respond, it goes to iMessage.
It goes to my laptop, it goes to my iPad. It doesn't go to this Android phone.
Gotcha.
Things I love, I mean, just like on the Nexus 4, the widgets. You got the home screen widgets are so great, and anyone who's used iPhone or who's used Android knows this. Having a calendar widget on your home screen, having a Gmail widget, the notification bar is so much better in that it actually pops up the icon of what your notifications are.
Rather than just the icon of the app or nothing.
It's the icon of the app. You have two mailbox apps. You have three Twitter icons or two mailbox icons on the top, and so it lets you know what you're going to get when you scroll down here. The lock screen widgets are wonderful. Gmail, I mean, just the how well it's tied into Google services, which it's obvious because it's Google's OS. The one thing that, we talked about the high resolution screen, 1920 by 1080, and while we're still in the process of testing the Nexus 7, one thing I'm not I'm not sure if I like just yet is that these two devices have the same resolution screen. They're both 1920 by 1080.
Yeah.
But because Android knows that one is a tablet and one's a phone, they resolve the pixel density differently because this is physically a bigger screen, 7 inches, as opposed to 4.7.
So you see different size font rendered?
You see not only different size font rendered, but the widgets are also different. So for example, my calendar can take up.
Oh wow!
It's fine if I take up less of the screen on the tablet and I have more screen space for icons. But on the phone, I really need it to take up the entire phone.
Yeah.
And it's really more apparent in email, where on the Nexus 7, I can stack 2 emails up and down and show plenty of messages. Here I have to use basically one screen for each email.
Gotcha.
It's using that real estate better because there's larger physical space. And here, because it knows that if it was too small, you might have to squint. I mean, pixel density is higher, so it just doesn't do that.
Not everybody has the eyes of a 27 or 28-year-old, Norm.
Yeah.
Are you using any third-party replacements for core software stuff like
I don't feel
keyboards?
like I need to. Oh no, for keyboards, yes, I use SwiftKey.
Okay.
SwiftKey, I'm loving SwiftKey. Has all the swipe functionality. The one that I don't like about SwiftKey, and I can show right here, is I might actually disable SwiftKey because of this. Is that in SMS messaging, on the bottom right-hand corner is a smiley face, and I hit that accidentally so many times, and I never use this emoticon ever, and there's no way to disable that, and people on the SwiftKey forums have been complaining about this for years. So I might get rid of SwiftKey just because I hate this little shortcut.
Damn you emoticons.
Or if I wish it was converted to sad face.
So it seems like you like the HTC One quite a bit.
I really like the HTC One. It's an expensive phone.
It's $600.
$600.
Would you buy the Google edition if you were buying it for yourself, or would you get the contract version with HTC Sense?
Being in the middle of a contract now, I would get the Google edition.
Okay.
You lose these things like the Zoetrope, the Zoe functionality that HTC has built in the Sense UI. You lose blink feed, which is their...
What's the Zoetrope functionality?
Zoetrope, in Sense UI, we don't have a Sense version. If you take a photo, you can actually, it automatically takes a 3-second clip to give you almost like an animated GIF thumbnail.
Oh, that's neat.
And people like that. You lose blink feed, which is their front page home screen news aggregation replacement. And, you know, while HTC and Google say that updates will come more frequently than they will with the Sense UI stuff, we still haven't seen, as of today, a week after 4.3 is out, we still haven't seen 4.3 for the HTC One Google Play Edition.
So they're faster, but not as fast as the Nexus devices.
We don't know if they're faster.
We don't know.
Because it's not out yet. And I was hoping by today, after 5 days, we would see a 4.3 for this.
Such entitlement, you Android users.
I mean, I have it on here, 4.3 on here. The moment I turn this on, update to 4.3. That's because these are Nexus devices, and that's what you get when you buy Nexus devices. Drivers
are hard, man. So that'll do it for us today, I guess. Norm likes the HTC One quite a bit.
I really like the HTC. I love
how
the
many
HTC One.
How many norms would you give the HTC One?
It is 5 meganorms out of 5 meganorms.
Okay, that's pretty good. We can't do better than that. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.